You have the paper one, the paper one. Now, paper one constitutes of 100 questions from the portion of general studies. And you also have paper two in the prelims phase. Paper two, that deals with the portion of CSAT, which is qualifying in nature. CSAT means you will find questions regarding the logical reasoning, regarding quantitative aptitude, as well as comprehension. So that is basically qualifying in nature. All that you need to do is secure 33% marks in paper two. It is the paper one marks in the prelims phase which will decide whether you are able to appear for the mains exam or not. Now, in this paper one, out of the 100 questions which appear for the general studies portion, at least around 50 to 60 questions, or 50 to 60% of the questions, they have an orientation of a direct relation with current affairs or an indirect linkage with current affairs. Now, here you need to be well versed with the happenings across the world and around the world. For example, if you take a look at one of the questions which was asked in the prelims 2022, here one question which was framed was regarding, there were a list of countries which were given in the paper, and the candidates were asked that which of these countries they share their border with Afghanistan. Now, on the face of it, this question might appear to be very factual, but think about it. Why is it that UPSC is asking about the border of Afghanistan? Does UPSC want to torture you to such an extent that it wants you to learn and remember each and every country, each and every national and state boundary? No. It has asked a question regarding Afghanistan because Afghanistan was in discussion for the previous year. That is why, because of the NATO troops pull out from Afghanistan and Afghanistan being left in a state of lurch and turmoil, that is why UPSC has framed a question from there. So you will always find a direct connotation of current affairs in the portion of prelims. But then many of the candidates, many of the students, they go for a shortcut mechanism where they simply start rote learning all the compilation of current affairs, maybe 1 month or 1 week prior to the examination. Let us suppose by hook and crook you manage to pass through the prelims phase of examination. After that, you are confronted with one of the most arduous stages of this exam, that is the mains exam. Now, the mains examination, that tests the writing skills skills. Why is it so? This is because here you are confronted with subjective questions. And these subjective questions require a detailed analysis as well as a detailed answering ability and the ability of the candidate to be able to paint a larger picture around any problem which confronts us directly or indirectly, or any problem that India faces in general. Now, here, the analysis portion of the candidates is an absolute must. But then, in the mains examination, you have a host of different papers which are conducted. You have the essay paper, then we have the GS papers, GS paper 1 to GS paper 4, where subjects such as history, geography, society, economy, governance, environment, agriculture, ethics, all of them are covered from GS paper 1 to GS paper 4. And then you have the optional paper. Even the optional paper, and depending upon whichever optional that you choose, you will have 2 papers in optional as well. You'll be confronted with paper 1, which will largely be theoretical in nature, as well as paper 2, where again you will come across the connotation and the requirement of current affairs. Now, if you take a look at all these various different conducted within the mains exam itself, be it the essay paper or be it the GS papers or the paper 2 of your optional subject, all of them require the candidate to be well versed with what is going on around you. In essays, you are required to write a long essay for any given topic for around 1000 to 1200 words. And that carries a weightage of 125 marks. So in total, you are supposed to write 2 essays. Generally, you find the topics of essay, few of the times they are very, very direct, such as border management in India is a complicated task, or the geopolitical importance of Indian Ocean can be utilized by India going ahead into the next century. Now, sometimes when the essay question is direct, there you get a chance and an opportunity to bring into light the various perspectives regarding what are the aspects, let's say, of border management, what are the issues that India is facing with regards to bordering area with, let's say, Pakistan or China or Bangladesh. Where is it that we encounter cattle smuggling? Where is it that we encounter intruders? And that portion enriches your essay beyond any particular limit. But then sometimes you are confronted with very vague type of questions even in the essay paper. For example, you might be asked to talk about truth and wisdom. Now, when the questions are so vague, you cannot simply go ahead by analyzing and interpreting the meaning of such questions. You have to bring to light the perspectives, the historical perspective, the geological and geographical perspective, the political perspective of any issue. And that can be possible only if you have been following the current affairs for the past 1 year. Because that gives you a unique ability to be able to look at issues beyond what appears directly in front of the eyes. That helps you understand the implications of smallest of the moves on the largest of the stages. So that is why it becomes absolutely imperative to go through these. Now, when you provide the perspective of current affairs and the current happenings along with examples in your mains answer and in your mains paper, that makes your answer very, very authentic. And here in the mains examination or the stage of the mains examination, the evaluator does not know who you are. The evaluator is not aware about your educational background. It is purely based upon your writing and your writing skill only that they are able to judge what kind of candidate you are. So that is why it becomes very important to attract the attention of the evaluator for the longest period of time. And that can only happen if you bring modern day examples and contemporary examples and happenings around you. Please understand, UPSC puts forward a very basic and general requirement for the selection of candidates. UPSC says that all that they require is an average aware graduate. While being average is something that maybe all of us can vouch for, being graduate is another necessity that you have to complete before clearing this examination or attempting for this examination. It is the awareness part which differentiates those who clear this examination and those who keep on repeating this process again and again and are stuck in this whole cycle for 4 years, 6 years, 7 years, and sometimes even beyond. Even out of the 10 candidates who appear for the mains exam, close to 2,000 to 2,500 candidates, they are selected and they appear for the personality test or the interview stage. Now, this interview stage is already been checked in the stage of prelims and the mains exam. Interview is largely about understanding the personality. And that personality comes to light by certain issues, certain topics where your opinion shall be sought. For example, you can have a question regarding the issues that India faces. India faces the issue of water scarcity and water stress, while simultaneously suffering from floods in majority of the part of the country. Now, in these types of questions, you are not supposed to provide a kind of a bookish answer, because everybody who will qualify for the interview stage would have gone through the same number of books. if not more. Because the types of study materials, the amount of study materials that are required to be covered in order to complete the syllabus, they are limited in a sense. So you can expect all of your competitors to be going through the same books. So what differentiates you from the ones who will not succeed? There is only one difference. What is the perspective that you can bring to the table? Because UPSC is selecting the candidates who shall be the future decision makers of the country. Once you get selected through this process, let's say you get into the services and you get maybe IAS or IFS or IPS, thereby you will be supposed to steer the ship in the deepest of the problems that the country faces. Each and every action of yours can influence the lives of millions. So that is why UPSC is searching for candidates who are able to look at the larger picture, who are able to broaden their horizon beyond what appears directly in front of the eyes. And for that, one needs to understand the various perspectives around any issue. Any issue for that matter, be it water stress, be it agricultural issue, be it farmer income, be it labor stress, be it slowing down of economy or increase in the economic growth rate, any issue out there will have multiple perspectives. It will have a historical perspective. For example, if you take the case of water stress, it has a historical perspective that even historically, many civilizations, they simply moved from one region to another because an area suffered from significant water stress. The entirety of the region of Fatehpur Sikri, which was constructed after spending millions of dollars in construction cost at that point of time, was vacated within 70 days because of scarcity of water. So we have a historical context regarding water scarcity. Then you have the geological and the geographical aspect, why certain areas, they suffer from scarcity of water. That leads to social issues, whereby certain regions such as Bundelkhand in India, that is the southern part of Uttar Pradesh and northern part of Madhya Pradesh, there the water stress is simply humongous, which leads to farm crop failures. And as a result of that, people migrate to various different cities in order to work as migrant laborers. So as you can see, each and every issue has multiple aspects and multiple perspectives. It is your ability to look at them at once, to comprehend all of them, and then paint a larger picture regarding what can be done, what can be the solution for this. That aspect and that ability to provide solution is what is going to differentiate you. So this portion of current affairs, how do we deal with it? Majority of us, we take it separately and we consider it as a separate subject altogether, that let us finish all these subjects, all the basic subjects of polity, economy, history, and then if the time permits, before the examination, we will cover current affairs. That is the biggest blunder that you can commit as a candidate. So what should be our approach? So if you take a look at current affairs and the relationship with the various different subjects that we have, the relationship is very simple. Current affairs is not at all a separate portion which has to be covered. If you look at it, basically, in the static portion of polity, economy, geography, environment, science, and tech, whatever you study through the basic books, what you are getting used to are the concepts, the basic concepts. And the portion in current affairs, they are nothing but a mere application of those similar concepts. Let me cite you an example. Suppose you come across a news story in the newspaper that RBI has changed the monetary policy rates in order to have a control over inflation, in order to target inflation, in order to bring down inflation, or so on. Now, unless and until you as an individual are not aware that what inflation is, unless and until you are not aware about what these monetary policy rates are, you will never be able to understand that portion of current affairs. So that brings into light the importance of covering these basic concepts. Now, once you have covered these basic concepts, let's say you are a very diligent, very meticulous student who has time and again read books after books, and you have mastered all the various different things which are given in the book. Let's say in the case of the governor, in the topic of polity, let's say we come across an issue about the powers of governor. Now you read from the books from Lakshmikant or from D.D. Basu, what are the powers of the governor? But then, unless and until you look at the daily happenings, the daily occurrences, where a governor can use his discretionary power, what are the statutory powers of governor, what are the discretionary powers of governor, you will never be able to reinforce the concepts that you have studied. So the study of current affairs is nothing but a mere reinforcement of the concepts, the basic points that you cover in the static portion. Unless and until you manage to interrelate and marry these two, you will always be left behind, and you shall always be left chasing the questions. And that is the worst thing that can happen in your preparatory journey. So always, whenever you come across any portion of the static subject, geography, for example, you read about volcanic eruptions in geography. Now, unless and until you keep a track of where these volcanic eruptions have been happening for the past couple of years, you will never get an idea about what are the applications, what are the implications, and where is it that these volcanic eruptions do occur. So a kind of reinforcement chart is very, very important, and a kind of a positive feedback loop is important in this case. Now, questions oftentimes, even though we think that they have been asked from the static portion, they have a connotation of current affairs. And that is something we need to realize. For example, I will show you certain questions which have appeared in the prelims exam. Now, if you take a look at this question, the question is that from geography. It has been listed in all the various places as a question appearing from geography. So the question is, with reference to ocean mean temperature, which of the statements is or are correct? Now, ocean mean temperature in geography is important in order to determine where we start observing a low pressure, where we start observing a high pressure, and the formation of this low pressure and high pressure can be the causation of rainfall or can even lead to dry conditions. So ocean mean temperature becomes important. Now, if you take a look at the options given, the options appear to be very factual. You have certain data pointers thrown in front of you, most probably, which you will never come across or you will never find it in any book which is given. Immediately, if you ask the candidates who come out of the examination hall that how was the paper, majority of them will give you the feedback that the question was absolutely random, anything regarding geography was asked, and few data pointers were thrown where we had no clue from which book it was asked. That is something that the students will tell you. But then, if you analyze carefully, this question was asked why? Why is it that UPSC is asking you this question? There must be a reason. Put yourself in the shoes of UPSC. Think about it that you have to frame 100 questions out there. Then from which areas will you pick up those 100 questions so that those questions are different every year? Because let's say we have any kind of conception, any kind of presumption for UPSC, one thing that we have to appreciate is that they rarely end up repeating any question. So year after year, in the prelims examination, they will throw 100 new questions in front of you. So in that situation, in that case, how to be aware about these factual portions? So these have been picked from current affairs. If you analyze the current affairs, you will find that there was a detailed discussion which happened. That is why this question was framed. And if you find this particular article which appeared in the Hindu, ocean mean temperature can better predict Indian monsoon. Now, again, as I told you, the purpose why UPSC wants you to go through all these different subjects is because UPSC wants an aware graduate. You should be aware of the problems that the country is facing, about the opportunities that India beholds going ahead into the next century. So if you analyze this, here, ocean mean temperature is important in terms of Indian monsoon. And Indian monsoon, in turn, is very, very important for our agricultural output. And this, in turn, controls our economy. So that is why the basic fact regarding what can control the amount of rainfall which happens in India also becomes very important, and mightily important for that matter. So you can see directly a question has been asked from the portion of current affairs. Let's take another example. Here you find a question regarding which appeared in the prelims of 2018 rather. Here you find a question again from the portion of geography itself, where the question talks about the Barren Island volcanic eruption. Now this talks about the aspect that Barren Islands, is it the only active volcano in India? Where is it situated? Is it situated 140 kilometers east of Great Nicobar? And if you take a look at the third statement, this talks about the last time that the Barren Island volcano erupted was in 1991, and it has remained inactive since then. Now, on the face of it, again, you might question yourself that which book should I cover so that I am able to attempt these questions. I have covered all the basic books, still I have not come across this information. Now, think about it. Why will UPSC ask you such a question? The answer is simple. Because of the news story in front of you. Now look at the date of the news story. It is of 2017. Now here the question is, India's only live volcano active again. That means in 2017, this volcano erupted. Now, this volcano erupted in 2017, and you had a question appearing from this in 2018. So that basically shows you one simple aspect of UPSC. UPSC also has got a limitation from where it can frame 100 new questions every year. You as a candidate are not supposed to read n number of books. You as a candidate are not supposed to read various doctorate and as well as master's level books for subjects. No, they don't require supercomputers at UPSC. They require people who are aware. So cover the basics and be aware about what is happening on a day-to-day basis. And that awareness will come only if you are regular enough. Only if regularly you are not only able to understand and read the newspapers, but also analyze them. Analysis of newspaper also becomes very important. How? And where is it that we find its implication? So here I show in front of you a particular news article which appeared not only in Indian Express, but a host of different publications for the past year have been discussing this, that how the COVID pandemic has worsened inequality in India. Now, what does this mean? So during the COVID pandemic, we had lockdowns and an unprecedented level of shutdown of economy. Now, when the economy was shut down, many small businesses, many daily wage earners, they were left without a job. Whereas the affluent class, they managed to do with their savings. But then the poorer sections of the society, they had nowhere to go and no income to earn. That is why, if you remember the scenes during the lockdown, when the COVID lockdown was imposed, there was a large-scale migration, in fact, reverse migration of people from the metropolitan cities to their rural areas. Now, that brought about an unprecedented level of poverty and an unprecedented level of suffering across various sections of the society, but it was the economically poor section of the society which was hampered significantly more. And in fact, that economically poor section of the society that is still struggling to come back into the economically productive cycle, and they are still struggling to find jobs. As a result of that, the rich are getting richer while the poorer keep on getting poorer. And that brings about inequality unparalleled. So these kinds of articles, that helps you analyze it, analyze the various sectoral approach, that agricultural sector, if it has suffered, to what extent, the manufacturing sector, if it has suffered, to what extent. Also, women, they have been put out of employment at an unprecedented rate during the pandemic. Why is it so? Are there any caste and class divisions as well in this inequality? All that you get to analyze in these articles. Now, where will it come in handy, you might ask? So basically, if you take a look at the question paper which was framed for 2021 mains, look at the question paper and the question which appeared. A direct question was asked in the mains examination in the year 2021, that COVID-19 pandemic accelerated class inequalities and poverty in India. Comment. A direct question. For this, you are not required to go through endless amount of materials, endless amount of various different sources of information. A direct question based from newspaper itself. That would have given you a kind of ability to answer this ably well. Now, take a look at another question again, which appeared in 2021 itself. So in 2021, another question which was framed was, examine the role of gig economy in the process of empowerment of women in India. Now, gig economy. Gig economy is a kind of a freelancer-based economy where you work based upon the demand. You are not a permanent employee of sorts. Now, this question, let's say we are not aware that where it has been asked from. Look at the newspaper discussion regarding this, which has happened for the entirety of the past year. You come across a news story that gig economy to boost women empowerment in formal sector. And that is reflected by a study. So here, it tells you that how women, they are getting empowered, how they are getting a kind of an economic empowerment as well as a implied social empowerment because of this aspect of gig economy. Now, this gig economy, this has provided a kind of an economic freedom as well to a majority of women who have been put out of jobs during the COVID pandemic. Now, if you analyze this article, if you read this article talks about that according to a report as per published by United Nations, we have an understanding that gig economy can be beneficial. Now, how do we tackle these current affairs? Do we tackle these current affairs from face value itself? Do we look at these news stories as they appear and we leave it at all? No. The idea should be to look into which study is being talked about. The idea should be to get into the when, where, why, and how of any given topic, of any given issue. That is absolutely essential. So that is why when you come across the aspect that this is a study of United Nations, keep asking yourself and find it. Which study of United Nations talks about this? And does it reflect any other comparative study for any other contemporary economies such as Bangladesh, Vietnam, etc., so that it gets you a kind of a reference pointer as well. So that is something which should be followed as an approach. Now, what should be our sources for current affairs? So basically, everybody will tell you n number of sources which you can refer for current affairs. But the sources of current affairs should be limited, and one should be adherent and meticulous and quite regular with those sources through and through. So newspaper reading is an absolute must. Newspaper reading cannot be replaced at all. So if you take a look at which newspapers to be followed, either the Hindu or the Indian Express. Either of these newspapers have to be followed. Now, it is based upon your choice that which newspaper you are more comfortable in, and accordingly, pick up any of that newspaper and go ahead and be regular with that newspaper only. Please don't get into the habit that, let's say you have read the Hindu for the first 28 days, and then after that you find out that your friends are reading the Indian Express, and then you switch over to Indian Express, again you switch back to Hindu. No. Any of the newspaper that you are comfortable with, stick with that. But it should be either of these, because these will provide you a holistic idea of not only what is happening within the country, but what is happening across the globe from the perspective of civil services. Along with that, you need to be following certain magazines as well in order to broaden your approach, in order to broaden your understanding as well. So which are the magazines which are essential? Basically, we have a rural developmental magazine, that is Kurukshetra. Now, this is a rural developmental magazine. Now, this is a magazine which deals with issues of rural India and what can be the possible solutions, as well as what can be the success stories which have been crafted in different parts of the country. So, this aspect of rural development is important for your exams. Why? Because 65% of our population is still rural. So that brings into impact the role of rural India, and issues and problems and solutions of rural India become very important. Then you have Yojana. Yojana is an issue-based magazine. It is again a monthly magazine. Along with Kurukshetra, this is again a monthly magazine whereby you have various policies of the government, various programs and schemes of the government which are analyzed, whereby the benefits, the lacunae, the drawbacks, all of them, they are checked, and eventually the outcome is painted before our eyes. So that is where Yojana is also important. If you are regular with these basic portions of current affairs, you won't be having that much amount of stress immediately before the examination. So in this Yojana, for example, and Kurukshetra, for example, it is not very voluminous. But then here, if let's say you go across our YouTube website and after each day of newspaper reading, you go across the daily news analysis, that provides you an idea that any article, what are the perspectives of that article that could be covered. If let's say you come across that Yojana and thereafter, let's say you understand in detail about the various perspectives for the article, such as Har Ghar Jal Mission, what is the role of it, which is the district which has been declared as a complete project for Har Ghar Jal Mission. So that detailed analysis and updation of current affairs, that is going to come in handy. Along with that, another magazine that is down to earth is also becoming increasingly important day to day because of the aspect of climate change, agricultural issues, which are becoming prominent day to day and day after day. But then, most of us, we know that newspaper reading is an absolute must. Most of us, we are aware that why we have to go for newspaper reading, but still majority of the candidates, they quit this aspect of newspaper reading, they quit the habit of newspaper reading within a couple of weeks or a couple of months itself. So if you ask them why is it that they leave this habit, most of them will give you the answer that newspaper reading consumes a lot of time. But that happens because we are not aware how to cover the newspaper, how to approach the newspaper, which are the areas which are important and which are the areas which could be ignored. So how to tackle these newspapers? So in these newspapers, you will come across certain stories which are evolving in nature. For example, let's say the government announces a new scheme. Now, as the scheme is being announced, till the time that it is implemented, and also the drawbacks and the benefits of the scheme which come to light after, let's say, 6 months or 7 months, that entirety of the process, that needs to be observed, that needs to be followed, because that is what will provide you with perspective and ability to provide solutions as well. Certain of the articles that you come across like this, for example, even in international relations, we come across the aspect of Russia and Ukraine and tensions in entirety of the European Union because of that aspect. But still, that is an evolving story. So you cannot eventually rely upon the aspect that someone will provide me that who won the war between Russia and Ukraine and that will be the solution. No, that cannot be the approach. You need to be aware that if, let's say, recently Russia and Ukraine held talks regarding grain exports in Turkey, why was that? And what will be the global economic implication of the same? Then you come across certain other detailed stories. This is again another article which appeared in the Hindu quite recently. Now, here in this article, you find a detailed explainer about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and its stature and its role in the modern world. Now, when you read this article, when you come across this article, it has got various different important stages and important phases. One of the phase is, let's say, what is the organizational structure of SCO. So that provides for the static portion. Whereas when you come across the aspect of, is it about countering the West? What is and how is it relevant to India? Both of them, they are evolving in nature. So both of these aspects, they become dynamic. So from the same article, you can have mains-based, absolutely theoretical question which can be framed from that, as well as prelims-based basic question which can be formed regarding the organizational structure, who can be the members of SCO, who can be the observers of SCO, if India is a member or not, if yes, when did India become a member, is Pakistan a member or not, which are the various countries which have become a part of SCO. How is it that India, in the times of tough relationship with China, how is it that India manages to conduct its proceedings in SCO? So that is where, from the same article, both static and dynamic portions can be extracted. Then after that, you also come across many different articles which are political in nature. So does a newspaper need to be covered with regards to each and every article? Are each and every article absolutely relevant for your newspapers? So the answer is no. So when we talk about to read or not to read, whether we have to necessarily cover an article or not cover an article, thereby, what do we come across? Let's say we are confronted with the article that free education and healthcare, they are not freebies. They will simply be put out of the relevance. So that is why when you come across these news stories, don't simply ignore all of them altogether, but then try to understand why is it that a particular chief minister is talking about the aspect of freebies. That is because RBI has come out with a recent report regarding the importance of fiscal management in various states and the fiscal situation which is being observed in various states. So how to approach this kind of information? Immediately when you are confronted with this kind of a possibility, start digging deeper. Get into the when, where, why, and how approach of it. And then analyze what are the key fiscal indicators of the states. Whether certain states they are doing good or not. If not, why not? If a certain state has borrowed significantly, obviously its fiscal health will be absolutely bad. So that is how you will be able to have a lasting information base which is going to help you in all various stages of the exam. This is going to help you not only in answering your GS-based questions from polity, economy, geography, environment, but also certain unconventional areas such as history and art and culture. an overwhelming majority of the candidates, they will give you the opinion that history and art and culture are absolutely vague because you don't know which kind of questions will be asked from which book in discussion. So there again, when you analyze the newspapers, you will find that many of the questions, they have a kind of a connotation or an implication of historical background and cultural and traditional realities. For example, you will find such snippets which are present in newspapers. For example, Tiva tribesmen, they are performing the traditional dance which they participate during the Vanchua festival. So here you are exposed to two sets of information, that there is this Vanchuva festival. Why is that celebrated? And it is celebrated by which tribe? So if UPSC asks you a question regarding Vanchuva festival, does not mean it is asking you from any affairs. Then the most important aspect of it is to be able to differentiate between general knowledge and general awareness. Now, what is the difference between them? So the difference is very subtle, but you have to understand the examination that you are appearing for requires you to be aware. Let me cite an example here. Suppose you come across an information that the height of Mount Everest has increased by 17 millimeters. Now, is that an important information? No. UPSC is never going to ask you a question that the height of Mount Everest has increased by 10 centimeter, 12 centimeter, 13 centimeter, or so on. But then the important aspect can be, why is the height of Mount Everest still increasing? Why is it that Himalayas, they are still rising? That is the awareness aspect. Knowing the exact amount of milk produced, let's say in Europe or Australia, and the exact amount of milk exported from these areas is absolutely not important. But knowing why these areas, they are milk surplus producing regions, that becomes important. That analysis is what makes you more aware. So that is where the awareness part is driven from. So that is why always you have to focus upon the awareness aspect. And when we talk about the general knowledge part, that is, we are talking about factual portion. This factual portion you can ignore while covering your current affairs. Now, current affairs is of many types. If, let's say, you are following the masala news or the entertainment news, that is also current affairs. So that is why one needs to be aware of what to read and not to read. Is no longer relevant enough, then be sure and be meticulous to weed them out as well. So you need to be updated. Updated regarding what? Regarding the peripheral developments. Okay. One needs to be updated regarding the peripheral developments which take place. And most important out of all of this is revision. Unless and until we carry out revision on a regular basis, and when I say regular basis, either fortnightly or a monthly basis, revision has to be carried out. Now, if you are able to carry out this process of revision time and time again, that is only the method by which you can be able to reinforce what you have studied, what you have come across. Otherwise, you cannot expect your brain, you cannot expect your memory to be able to retain what you studied today 1 year down the line. You will be flooded with so many new pieces of information on a daily basis that chances are that what you have studied even, let's say, 2 days back, you'll be forgetting that within a week. So revision is a must, and revision should be done in a cumulative manner. What is cumulative manner of revision? So after, let's say, you have revised the previous 15 days of current affairs, then for the next 15 days, after you conduct the revision, even for that, there you make sure that you have revised the previous parcel as well, and the previous section of 15 days as well. So every time that you carry out your revision, you go back in revising each and every portion. That is what makes you a very well-informed candidate, and you will not have any stress before the prelims or the mains phase of examination. Now, one aspect or one query regarding newspaper is whether we should go for note making or not. Is note making an absolute necessity? So the answer again is mixed here. If, let's say, you are very regular with the monthly magazine and you consistently are able to consolidate that monthly magazine, you are able to add on new pieces of information and remove the no longer relevant pieces of information from that set, then maybe you can skip that note making. But ideally, one should practice note making for newspapers as well. And what should be the approach? So the approach should be and has to be very simple. Ideally, what one should do is maintain different files and maintain different individual A4 sheets of paper, and have individual A4 sheets of paper, let's say for polity, let's say for economy, then let's say for environment, and also IR or international relations. Now, every day, any important news which appears from this area should be jotted down, should be immediately noted down. And the entirety of the news article need not be noted down. Only in 3 to 4 brief pointers about the areas that you feel are important from that portion, which can be relevant from the examination, that you note down. Chances are that on a daily basis, you might not come across news articles for each of the subjects. So that is why consolidate this at the end of 15-day cycle or the monthly cycle, depending upon how frequently you are able to revise. And eventually, after every month, analyze it again. You have to consolidate, you have to update them again. And this can serve as your revision material before your examination. But again, this need not, or this has not to be a voluminous exercise. This has to be very brief and very concise. Here, in fact, I would also suggest that you maintain another kind of file or piece of information which you can tag as factoids. In that, you can mention few of the important and relevant facts. And when I say important and relevant facts, I'm talking about factual information. For example, WHO, let's say it has prescribed the number of doctors needed per 1,000 population. And what is the reality in India? The number of under trial convicts which are still imprisoned, the pendency of cases before the courts. So these are certain important facts which can be relevant for your mains paper, which can make your answer appear to be very, very authentic. That is where the role of factoids come into play. So when the role of factoids come into play here, that means this needs to be revised frequently. And you need to get into a habit of revising these facts almost on a weekly basis, so that all these sets of facts and information regarding the forest coverage of the country, regarding the area under desert land in the country, etc., that should be something which should be present even on the back of your palms. That is how sure you should be about these pieces of information. So that is why, and that is how you should go for the note making for this examination. Now, after that, coming to the final issue and the final aspect. Is coaching absolutely necessary? In order to cover this, is it absolutely necessary to go for any coaching? So the blunt answer is there is no exam out there in the world which cannot be cleared by self-study, provided that you know the direction to follow, provided you know the pitfalls and how to avoid those pitfalls. Every exam can be cleared by self-study. But then, if let's say you do decide to take help, then we can provide you help with regards to a host of various product offerings and product services. Now, sometimes there are candidates who enter into this field having a 6-year target or a 5-year plan, that I will be clearing this examination in 5 years. So for the first 2 to 3 years, I'll try to understand the pattern of this examination. I will commit my own mistakes and then I will learn from them, and maybe in the 4th, 5th or 6th attempt, then I will be a serious candidate. If you want to fall into that category, well, you are free to commit your own mistakes and learn from them. But let's say if you are one of those serious candidates who wants to clear this in one go or 2 attempts at max, you have a small deadline in front of you, then you need to be absolutely sure about what to do and what not to do. Which are the portions regarding this information of current affairs that needs to be adhered to and which can be ignored. That is where we can come at help through our variety of offerings, such as, let's say, our mentorship services. Now, through our mentorship services, we provide you a constant access to our mentorship line. And let's say you come across any news article, any news story, and you are unable to understand that news story. Rather than waiting for that news story to be picked up in the class whenever it happens, you can immediately call up the mentor. You can ask about the relevance, the conceptual portion of that news story, and you can also gauge an idea regarding if that is relevant for the exams or not, if any question has been asked from that area or not. On a daily basis, when you read the newspapers, after reading that newspaper, thereby again ask yourself whether any article, how important that is, what are the various perspectives of it. So for that, you can always access our daily news analysis that we provide. Along with that, you can also attend the webinars. So in these webinars, we do conduct discussion regarding the various magazines that I have told you about, Yojana, Kurukshetra, Down to Earth, EPW, etc., which becomes very, very tedious task for the candidates because they are saddled with so much amount of study materials that they have to cover. Oftentimes, these magazines, they get ignored. But then these webinars, they provide you with a quick access regarding the relevant data pointers and also a brief gist, which can come in handy always. Now, other than that, we also have our classroom and live online classes. Now, in both these, we ensure that for every subject, that required interrelation between the current happenings and the static portion, that is maintained so that you get a larger picture at the end of the day. We ensure that you are not left with endless number of books to cover, but we would try to the best of our abilities to guide you through the minimum number of study materials which are required and the revision aspect for clearing this exam. So that is how we can provide you a help, because you'll be in the hands of those people who have already traveled this path and who know the mistakes that they have committed or that students generally encounter in this journey. At the end of it all, I just want to tell you one thing. This is eventually your journey. It is your decision whether to prepare for civil services or not. That is a kind of a luxury that not many candidates across the country they have. This opportunity should be cherished. It is not a burden, it is not a load upon you. It is a unique sense of purpose that you should have. So the decisions that you make in order to make your journey successful, that lies entirely upon you. Overall, just remember, if you do manage to succeed, you can change the face of the society, but let alone the larger picture, you can change your fate as well as the fate of your family. But having said that, it is not going to decide who you are. Rather, what you are and who you are decides the type of preparation that you embark upon. So embark upon a decision based preparation, embark upon a certainty based path, and ensure that you succeed. But never get stressed by this examination and never be afraid to take risks. After all, risk taking is the biggest virtue which defines the successful people out there. At the end of the day, just remember, this is just another job for just another examination. Enjoy the process and cherish this opportunity that you have, and indeed, you shall be successful. So that shall be all from my side. Thank you for being patient enough. Now, let us take a few questions. Lakshmi, how can we initiate now itself? So, now itself, whenever you are comfortable enough, or immediately, be it you are appearing for the examination in 2023 or 24 or 25, you should start with newspaper reading immediately. That newspaper reading should not be pushed towards, let's say, when we will complete the other subjects, then I will start with it. No, you should start as soon as possible. Nilesh, when we lost our interest in reading newspapers, then how we gain again interest in them? So the interest is generally lost in newspaper reading because generally candidates, they take too much amount of time. So that aspect of it, if you are able to limit it within 1 to 1.5 hours, that will always be a productive session for you. So thereby you will not lose interest, but make it a habit. Don't treat it as a separate study material. Try to make it a habit that every day morning, unless and until you don't cover the newspaper, your day does not start. If you treat it in that aspect, then it will work out. Gagan, time period of current affairs that needs to be covered for prelims and mains. Ideally, minimum of 12 months of current affairs prior to the date of prelims examination that needs to be covered. Then Katraji, UPSC is difficult to an average student only if you are not aware about how to approach this. If you have some idea about how to approach it, it becomes an easy job. Lena, I'm a working professional and not always able to manage daily timetable. In that, first of all, you have to ensure that, let's say, you will have days where you won't be able to read subsequently and significant amount of materials. Even during those days, you should cover the current affairs. So that portion of current affairs, if you are regular enough, that in itself will keep you providing information and reinforcing the concepts that you have read earlier. So that bare minimum should be done. Savreet, I just initiated with my preparation, but I'm unable to understand the Hindu content to great depth. Is it normal in the early stage of preparation? Absolutely, yes. But that is where persistence and perseverance is the key. Initially, please understand that there will be certain terminologies that you will find to be absolutely new. That is where you have to dig back into the conceptual part, and that is where you have to get those terminologies cleared. And after some time, that also starts providing you with a kind of a hint of the areas which are important and areas which are relevant enough. Krishna, are current affairs asked in optional? Absolutely yes. The paper 2 portion of optional, that deals with the current affairs aspect of the various theories, various different thinkers and their information that they have provided. That perspective in the current day relevance, that is present in the optional paper 2. So it is absolutely important. Anika, any newspaper, be it the Hindu or the Indian Express, that should be covered and that can be covered. Dipsha, 1 year is enough for preparation? Absolutely yes, provided you are able to utilize each and every day of that year and you know how to proceed with that. Otherwise, you can end up ignoring one area or the other and you will be repeating the same cycle. Shabana, is live learning or is tablet learning or live classes beneficial? Yes, when it comes to updation of that concept, understanding of that concept, and also the ability to interact and also ask certain questions, look at your competitors, that always provides you with a reference pointer and much needed boost. So that is something which can be important. Hamlet, e-paper or hard copy is best or for magazine? Anything. So in the case of e-paper, you can always have a kind of convenience for note making. In the case of hard copy, if you find it more convenient, you can go for that as well. Akender, please don't make notes from the monthly magazines of current affairs because that is already in a note format. If you start making notes from that as well, all you are doing is you are carrying out a photocopy exercise. So don't do that. Ashutosh, how to revise all magazine and newspaper? So, whatever important things you have managed to do, or whatever important things you have come across for the past 1 month or past 15 days, it is important that quickly recap that with the help of the notes that you have prepared. It is important that you recap that. And whichever portion has evolved as a story format, consolidate that into one page itself so that in one simple page you have a complete delineation of any policy, any scheme. That makes it very easy for revising. Sudhanshu, is Baiju's Current Affairs magazine enough? Yes. If you are meticulous with newspaper reading, the current affair magazines that we have, that again can always help you consolidate and revise very, very quickly. Okay, that is where I'll restrict the session for the day. Thank you for being patient enough. Keep your queries coming. We will be replying to that. And overall, thank you for being patient enough and being kind enough for that entirety of the session. Goodbye. Thank you. Take care of yourself.